Let's make a controversial tier list that people are gonna rage on. Or maybe they would like it, whatever. What we're gonna be talking about is a tier list of 2024 performance. The units that came out on 2024. There is a heavier emphasis for historical performance and just a little bit of like future expectations for them, right? And this is not the current tier list like, oh, these are the best units right now. These are units that I would like to acknowledge that they have good performed ever since they got released. And also, for the newer ones, it will be for basically their kind of future considerations. So some of the things that we consider about these is basically these are not all equal contributions in what I'm about to talk about. There's a little bit of heavier emphasis on solar raid performance because that's really what I like doing. If you guys want to talk about PvP, whatever it is, you guys have a different tier list. And based on past performance, how we've actually used them in solar raids, how significant was their contribution in their own element. Like for example, were they in part of team 1 or team 2, like top tier the top DPS, or were they more kind of like, okay, they came out but then they're not really as relevant in their element, right? Usefulness in their off element, also like how much we've actually used them outside of their own element in solar raid. But I do acknowledge, like, okay, have we actually like used them in which content? Like, do we use them in other contents, right? Did we use them in towers, or PVE, or anywhere else, right? Which people have content they've used them, solar raid, co-op, and everything else. And then for the newer units, I did try to put some more emphasis in terms of their future proofing. It's still a consideration for the older ones as well. I did think about like how they're gonna be future proofed. Will they be used more in the future, and what are the chances of them getting replaced? So if they're likely to be replaced soon, then they would be dropped down. If they are future proof, what kind of content and how significant that content is gonna be if we do actually use them. So with that out of the way, I'll be talking about the units that came out this year. First things first is actually the S tiers. Crown, Scarlet Shadow, and Cinderella are kind of like the new stable standard DPS for the neutral. These are like the top tier DPS in terms of bossing, solo raiding, and again, keep in mind there's a bit of heavy emphasis on solo raiding, but Crown trumps all of them. Like right now, ever since Crown came out, there's just universally there's no one else in team 1. It's like Crown. Now I put A plus and A because to me they're kind of like in the same level actually, but to be honest, like I would have put them both in the same A tier or A, but I wanted to separate them out a little bit just because of their overall usefulness, and perhaps like the A tier just feels like there's a little bit more future proof in them. The Killer Wife, Rouge, Grave, and Bunny Soda. Bunny Soda has been very integral ever since her release for Shotgun Team, and Shotgun Team has been relevant. Sometimes top 3 DPS, right? Sometimes even top 1 or top 2 DPS on the element. So the Shotgun Team has been integral in terms of performance for this 2024. Grave, she is rated a bit more on their future, but right now she is in the team 2, right? She is below Crown in terms of like the team that we're using her, and so that's why she's up here. Rouge, ever since her release, same with the Killer Wife, we've been pretty much like using them in every single solo raid, and they have been integral, and Rouge is going to be crucial for any HP team moving forward, so that's why they're up here. Now the A tier, they have performed very well and historically ever since they got released. So the Exio Treasure did get released, and most people have started just really investing in her once Mirror Container came out. So it took a while, but then ever since then, whenever there were bosses that didn't have core, electric team was actually used and alongside with Ein. So that's why I kind of put them here. And maid privity, she has been used in shotgun team, but the thing is, like, up until like when Bunny Soda came in, that's when maid privity just got really used a lot more often, right? So she wasn't as core in the shotgun team. So how integral was she in the team? That's another factor to consider. So these units were kind of used and they were very useful, and Mari, for example, has her AoE whenever she's bursting, and so when there's like a lot of those little mini missiles that's popping out, she does wave clear them, right? And allows you to have like a very more offensive team without like bringing a healer. So that's where Mari is. Personally though, I was actually kind of torn between Mari in terms of putting her in A or B, and the main reason mainly why I was just considering on putting her on B because she is kind of like on the borderline right now. Technically last Solar Age she was number 3 team for DPS but that was with Scarlet Black Shadow and Alice and Ludmilla. There's probably like another B2 that has to come out before she might end up being fully replaced, because right now in the bottom in terms of B2 would be Blanc right now, but that's assuming not with Rouge. Actually, I want to add also, Ein was also used, by the way, in Missile's Tower also, and people have been using her, so that's why I kind of rated her a little bit up also. And Maid Privity was also used in Elysian Tower, so that's something to note in terms of why I kind of rated them up here as well. The tower is something that was at least like used. I used them a lot on pushing them. Moving on for B is actually Maiden, Asuka, Quency, and Laplace, and Summer Sakura. Now, moving on to beat here, we have Maiden, Ice, Rose, and she's crucial. She was like top tier, but she is going to be restricted in her own element. So that's why, even though she's released on December, so we didn't get really a lot of usage on her, but her main use is going to be on her own element, but her position is like team 1, right? Or team, yeah, she was in the team 1 team for electric element, so that's why she is up here. And actually I was kind of borderline on A, but then I mean, I guess you could argue it if you include the Elysian Tower. Actually, now that I think about it, if I do include the Elysian Tower, I could put her up here. Now, the other ones are, we have Asuka, Quency, Laplace, and Summer Sakura. Now, here's the thing for these, right? When Laplace came out, when her treasure, we did not really get to use her in her own element advantage Solar Raid, but partly maybe that's because we didn't have a lot of treasure food exp at the time, because the Iron Solar Raid has been like almost like 6 months since now, so that's part of the reason why. But she is used a lot right now I know people have been using her in PvP, and I know people have been using her in Missile's Tower. But the thing in Missile's Tower is like there's Ein, there's Laplace, technically there's Maxwell also. So there were alternatives basically. Now Asuka is the one that really didn't perform in terms of that. She mainly got used on the fire element advantage. But from their point on, I think the biggest issue was like most of the core was not really relevant, and on the bosses she didn't really get used, and on the time where the boss has a lot of core, which is in the Ice Dragon Solar Raid, a lot of people still didn't use her. To be fair, there was one where they did use her, one team that did use her, but still, even to that point, like it still wasn't there. Okay, so there's that. You already have you had your chance with all the core, and she still wasn't used. Okay, that's just to put it to perspective. She's gonna be used for her own element, and that's really where the B tier is in here. I kind of expect in Iron Solar Raid, I hope that Laplace will still get used. We'll just have to see. Quency is going to be relevant for water, and Summer Sakura will be relevant for wind advantage. And actually, Summer Sakura is also helpful for people that don't want to like fast charge with Alice on Kraken, and so that's why they are kind of up here as well. There's still some use in it. Same with these. You can use these units for the anomaly interceptions. And actually, there has been a recorded kill ultra anomaly interception also for these, and so everyone in this B tier can be used for anomaly interception phase 9 clears. Now for C tier, Phantom and Guillotine are kind of iffy because they got released before the water solar raid came out, really, so that's why. But we also kind of just expect them to not really perform that much. And Viper was really just mainly used for the water advantage solar raid, but not everyone kind of did use her also, to be fair. And then we have Ray, and Ray is primarily, it's also fire advantage solar raid, so that's why she just has a bit more restrictive usage. Now here's for Rosanna. I was actually debating between B tier because technically we did use her for a good while since her release, but thing is, like, whenever we used her, she was on team 5, so basically she was already bordering being replaced anyway when we did use her. So even though that she did get some use on a good number of solar raids since her release, she was kind of bordering on the team 5 team. And again, part of the consideration is like how significant their contribution is in the solar raid. And she was basically at the borderline. These last ones are some things to consider. Basically, niche, I wrote them down. They're not necessarily lower than the C tier, but we kind of have used them in not all the time. There were some uses for them, but the thing is, like, there were also alternatives for them. Like, they weren't like the main use. And I know the top guilds have used a lot on elegg for the speed running in Union Raid, but we were actually using elegg for buff farming on overclock simulation, so that's something to consider why I kind of like elegg. Same, Leona is like the shotgun team, but shotgun team was kind of like borrowing from the bunnies and the duos, basically high school girls and Blanc and Noir, the bunnies, so the shotgun team wasn't as consistent. And then Bunny Alice has been kind of useful as that sort of extra healer. I did use her in some of the solar raids for my lower accounts because I didn't have any alternatives, or I don't have like these treasures, and I ended up just using Bunny Alice as either like a healer for Crown or a healer for the Team 5. It was kind of useful, but again, there were a lot of alternatives. It wasn't necessary. Zwei, there were some people that was using Snow White and some of the solar raids since her release, but it wasn't also a very integral, so that's why I counted it as niche. Rem, she was used in both water solar raids that were available, Nihilister and Land Eater. So at the very least, like, I will give that credit there, but she's kind of really edging at the borderline. And the main issue also is like the burst 2 category is, there's a very tough competition in the burst 2 category. And so right now, in terms of future proofing, she is actually kind of lower in priority. Diesel, I actually kind of like her, using her in Elysian Tower whenever I needed a kind of sustain or kind of more defensive situation. Diesel was actually useful. Her treasure wasn't really that important though. And Freema is also really, really rare. The main time that I could see her was used was clear with Laplace, but really that's about it for your Freema. I probably would have put it in F tier. If we're just rating it really in terms like overall usage, probably would have done that. And then PvP, I separated them out. They're not necessarily like lower in these priority, but it's a different build for them, right? So PvP, they have their own tier. They have been useful, and likely with arena, champion arena with 5 teams. Moran and Bay might end up being a little bit more used for that. And F tier, yeah, I don't know. We're not really gonna be using them. Trony came out. There was fire advantage. She wasn't used. Just to put it in perspective, okay. And Flora, where there was electric, she wasn't really used also. So I'll agree, we're not using it. Oh, Misato where? I forgot. Right there. Old Rapunzel. Oh yeah. Dang. There. Be that bad? It's an argument of if you don't have a B1 pilgrim or not. That's really it. She would be up here, right? If you'd have a B1 pilgrim, then I would put her down here. And again, there's like a lot more emphasis. Like I said, there's a bit more emphasis on like raids. Was there anyone else that we missed? Kilo was on half anniversary, right? I mean, I would put her in the PvP tier, but I would probably rank her kind of at the bottom of the PvP tier. So anyways, that's the kind of ranking. Again, it's really a lot more about historical performance for me, for them, and how I was rating them, ranking them. But yeah, that's like my ranking tier list on 2024 of the units that came out. By the way, did you know that 56% of you still hasn't subscribed yet? Make sure to click that subscribe button, click that bell notification, leave a comment, like, and subscribe.